New Zealand is a beautiful country. It's got some breathtaking landscapes and absolutely unreal wildlife, but their Pokemon tournaments aren't particularly massive. The Auckland Special Championships is New Zealand's first major event since 2019, so honestly, I'm just glad they're getting anything at all. With an astounding 80 players in the Masters division, you'd think it'd be the easiest dub of my career. However, if you were to look a little closer, you'd realize just how stacked this event really is. Henry Brand, Natalie Miller, Kato Arai, Angus Johnson, Matthew Burris, me. Consider the sheer concentration of top players given the size of the event. It's insane. I'm pretty sure there are at least 10 unique regional champions in the room, and like I said, only 80 players. This was not going to be easy. And when it came to my deck choice for the event, I'll be honest, that wasn't much easier. After religiously running Grimmsnarl at the last 3 majors, I've decided to put a self-imposed ban on the deck. It wasn't even allowed in my luggage, just in case it tempted me at the last minute. Dragapult, Gardevoir, and Goldengo were all off the table as well. Not because I thought they were bad plays or anything. In fact, quite the opposite. I just personally didn't like their vibes. And unfortunately, this format makes it incredibly difficult to cook truly unique rogue decks. So pretty early on in the process, I managed to narrow it down to 3 options. Charizard, Mega Absol, or Greninja. I don't know, it was kind of cool and I was winning a fair bit with it on stream. Charizard was the first to go. Once I realized how truly unplayable the Dragapult matchup was, there was no chance I was playing it. Like seriously, you need to slam in Lilies, Clefairy, and Crispin to make it even close to even? What are we even playing at that point? Greninja was much more tempting. On stream, I was absolutely farming the ladder and went something like 25 wins with only 1 loss. But a bit of dedicated practice where I actually ensured that the other side was playing the matchup correctly really took my hype down a notch. So that left Absol box. The cool thing about this deck is just how versatile it is compared to everything else in the meta. You essentially get around 10 flexible slots to play with and tech for whatever you predict that you'll need to be. In practice though, most of those cards are going to be dedicated to Goldengo. It's 20% of the field and an absolute nightmare to deal with. Luckily, there was already a plan. A few weeks ago, Fernando Cifuentes had this idea for an Absol build that included Sandy Shocks as a counter to Goldengo's Mega Lopunny, which was their counter for Mega Absol's Cornerstone Ogerpon. A counter for a counter. The list still has all the standard Absol tools like Arven for Precious Trolley and TM Turbo Energize to set everything up, as well as Mega Kangaskhan to draw cards with Run Errand and a bunch of Monkey Dories because that guy is broken. But the real standouts here are 3 Fighting Energy, Sandy Shocks, and Counter Gain to instantly respond to Goldengo's Mega Lopunny and allow 2 Cornerstone Ogerpon to completely wall them out. There's also a cheeky Ethan Sudowoodo to make use of that Fighting Energy as an alternative retreat locker, who can really abuse certain fighting resistant Pokemon by dealing 0 damage with Impound. Unfortunately, our next major tournaments didn't line up as I wasn't going to Toronto and New Zealand wasn't until the week after. So we weren't able to simultaneously debut the concept across the globe. However, there was an upside to this as I got to see just how well they performed with the entire Cifuentes family making day 2 on the 60. Even though a lot of the surprise factor was gone, I was really confident in the list and continued testing throughout the week leading up to Auckland. And for once, this practice was predominantly on TCG Live since I'd been too busy on the content grind to actually go outside. I did manage to hit 1900 elo though, which is pretty nifty for someone who doesn't really play much ladder. Unfortunately, that meant I had almost 0 paper reps with the deck. And considering my flight landed 9 PM the night before the tournament, it didn't look like I was going to get much of a chance. But I made the most of the time that I did have. We grinded games for a few hours at the Airbnb, and then at midnight, with deckless submission closing at 1 AM, I realized that I was barely using Ethan Sudowoodo and could easily cut it for a generically good card like a 3rd Penny, 4th Pokegear, or 2nd Counter Catcher. But almost as if it was a sign, in the very next game I'm testing against Goldengo, I am drawing abysmally. They're about to KO my Cornerstone Ogerpon with Lopunny, and I realize I have 1 single chance. I bench Sudowoodo, attach a Dark Energy, attach a Counter Gain, and announce Try to Imitate. I flip heads and one-shot the Lopunny. This guy is the GOAT and 100% staying in the list. We tested for a couple more hours after that, and I kinda got cooked by the time difference. New Zealand is one of the only places in the world where I actually go forward in time when I travel. So I ended up going to bed at 2 AM and had to wake up at 7 to get ready for the event. what could go wrong? Once we rock up, it finally hits me that this is literally just being held in a shopping center game store. It feels so much more like a big league cup than anything else, if that league cup had a whole bunch of the world's best players sprinkled in. Before I know it, I'm sitting down for round 1 and filled with all the usual nerves. What deck is my opponent playing? Am I going to draw a decent starting hand? Did I pack enough snacks for today? And then a judge comes over to deck check us before the round even starts. I'll tell you what, that doesn't help my nerves, because what if somehow, accidentally, I didn't submit the exact correct 60 cards? Don't worry, I got the right list, and we both passed the deck check with flying colors. And to add to the good news, my opponent was on Golden Go Lopunny, a matchup I was very prepared for. In game 1, they win the coin flip and choose to go second, but I have a solid start. And then things just keep getting better. My opponent attaches a fighting energy to their active Lunatone and passes. I turbo energize to my Cornerstone Ogerpon, they pass once again, and I win game 1. I genuinely could not have dreamed up a better way to start this tournament. In game 2, we do actually have to play some Pokemon though. I'm able to energize a Cornerstone with Monkey Dory on turn 2. They immediately KO the monkey while simultaneously setting up a Lopunny without the need for TM Evo. Crazy. I bench Fezandipity to draw 3 with Flip the Script, bossing up their Solrock to ensure that I take a prize with Cornerstone Ogerpon. My opponent benches their own Fezandipity and then chooses to boss up and KO my Fez with Lopunny. I don't fully agree with this line, but to be honest, at this point, I don't think it matters. From here, I Arven for Precious Trolley and counter gain, spawning in Sandy Shocks as well as Latias, Ursaluna, Monkey Dory, and Pecharunt. Attach Fighting Energy from hand to Shocks, use its Magnetic Absorption ability for another Fighting Energy, throw on a counter gain, and one-shot the Lopunny. This gets me down to 2 prize cards remaining while they still need to take 3. It's an incredibly chill position, and even in the worst case scenario where they tour up Fezandipity, I can always use E-Switch to attack with Pecharunt's Irritated Outburst for 300. They KO Sandy Shocks and play Team Rocket's Watchtower, but I made sure to hold on to Town Store just in case. Winning off of Boss's orders on their benched Fez with Ursaluna. Gotta love starting off with a dub. In round 2, we've already got a team kill, as I'm paired against someone else from the accommodation. Previous world champion Henry Brand. Did I mention this event is stacked? Notably, he is using a beautiful playmat. You should go and get your own at TimDanklin.com. There are 3 insanely sick designs and a whole bunch of other merch too. Go check it out. In game 1, we both start off well. I get to go second and rip a turn 1 trolley, but he pulled out the triple Dracloak on turn 2. Because of this, I opt for a more aggressive line, bossing up the only Dracloak that has energy on it. However, he responds with his own boss's orders and a Jet Headbutt to KO my Psyduck, leaving 0 damage in play. With prizes at 5-5, this should be a pretty clean position for me. I go for Claw of Darkness, hitting the active Dragapult for 200 and deleting a resource from his hand. But there is one key issue. I'm not able to re-establish Psyduck, and that could absolutely cause some problems later down the line. Henry rips Iono, sending my massive hand to the bottom of the deck, and then follows up by benching Duskull and Phantom Diving my Absol, spreading damage across the bench. I don't draw into any playable cards and just have to take the KO on his active with Claw of Darkness and hope that he whiffs on Neo Upper since there is no other energy in play. I do rip a Hilda from hand and I'm feeling pretty good about my odds. Until he Recon Directives into Rare Candy, Ultra Balls for Dusknoir, drops a Jamming Tower, and then plays Lily's Determination, drawing into Neo Upper Energy and Counter Catcher, literally just winning the game on the spot by popping Dusknoir on my Absol and gusting up the Latias with 10 damage already on it. I possibly could have played this one a bit less aggressively, but I liked my odds of hand ripping a key piece at some point and was feeling pressured by all those early Dracloak draws. On to game 2, I'm going second once again and don't play a supporter for like 7 turns. And Henry manages to take a 4 prize lead before I can really do anything. I do sneak a KO on the active Dragapult with Counter Gain and Absol, but he has Neo Upper Energy and Boss for games, so I have to take the L. Round 3 is another Dragapult. Although this time I catch a lucky break and they open with Blood Moon Ursaluna. This gives me so much time to set up and means that they aren't able to item lock me without also benching Latias or finding Professor Turo's scenario. Once my board is sufficiently established, I go in with Claw of Darkness on a turn where they just played Lily's Determination. This gives me the highest odds of hitting a crucial piece since they don't really have control over what's in their hand. And would you believe it? There goes their Turo, straight to the bin. With no real way to move Ursaluna, I should be able to win this game by generating damage with Pecharunt's Poison and moving it over with Monkey Dory. But unfortunately, Pecharunt is prized, so I can't properly commit to this checkmate game plan. Don't get me wrong though, this is still a near unlosable board state. I played it safe to the point where I ran them out of boss's orders, and even though they only had to take 2 more prize cards and I still needed 4, they were left with no option other than to attack my active active Mega Pokemon, giving me enough damage to steal the full 4-prize turn off of a double Munkidori onto Blood Moon Ursaluna and a second attack into the damaged Dragapult. In Game 2, we've got about 20 minutes on the clock. I open Yveltal without anything else, and they choose to give my hand a second chance at life with Iono. Although now I'm also item locked, so all I can do is retreat into the Kangaskhan that I found and draw 2 off of Run Errand. I draw another 2 next turn, and the turn after that, and again the turn after that. In fact, I draw about 500 cards and somehow all of them are items. Eventually, after all that itchy pollen, my opponent fully sets up their board and wipes me out of the game. It sucks that I didn't really want to scoop this game, since at any point one of those run errands could have gotten me right back into it. In the end, we had to call it a tie. 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 tie is not where I want to be after the 3rd round of any tournament. But on the bright side, we've at least got a lunch break now, so I can go and clear my head, rather than immediately jumping into another round while I'm still admittedly a bit tilted from the last couple. Next, I'm paired into a knocked-out Charizard deck. In Game 1, I bench both Cornerstone Ogerpon and Yveltal to simultaneously threaten both Retreat Lock and walling them out. I initially start off by energizing to my Mega Absol, but they immediately burn Prime Catcher and punch it. I happily respond with Penny, and now they only have 2 gusting options left in their 2 bosses' orders. Next, I power up Cornerstone Ogerpon with Kangaskhan in the active. Then, after they hit into it for 180 with Charizard, I confidently attach Bravery Charm and use Munkidori to heal out of range of a second attack. But they catch me off guard with a surprise jamming tower that I did not expect, chasing down Kangaskhan with boss's orders for a 3-prize turn. Unfortunately for them, now they're down to only 1 gusting out to get around Cornerstone, and they still haven't set up Terapagos yet, so nothing can really break the wall. I drop a Watchtower, turning off their Pidgeot and Noctowls, then rip Iono, setting them to a 3-card hand. From here, they have almost no control over the cards in their hand, and I just attack with Cornerstone like 7 times, eventually winning the game as they're just unable to draw out of the lock. This ended up being a really long one, and to be honest, I can't blame them for not scooping. If they were able to top deck a counter stadium, that might have just been enough. In Game 2, they start off by aggressively setting up Terapagos, not wanting to deal with that Cornerstone stance. But I already have a Bravery Charm attached, and I know that they aren't able to bench 8 Pokemon for enough damage and have Jamming Tower in play at the same time, so I can be sure that Cornerstone won't get knocked out this turn. They do burn Prime Catcher to get in a preemptive swing on it, but that's 1 out of 3 switching cards gone. With only 1 or 2 Jet Energies left in their deck, I go straight into Yveltal, locking up a Noctowl and using Munkidori to heal Cornerstone while spreading damage all over their board. They simply don't have the resources to find both boss's orders and Jet Energy on the same turn, so it is not looking great for them. I can either go back into Retreat Lock if they do use Jet Energy to KO Yveltal, or if not, I'll just keep healing Cornerstone, eventually dealing with Terapagos and then going back into my wall mode. That's not even factoring in the possibility of just bricking them out of the game with Watchtower. Time does end up getting called while we're still playing out Game 2, but I was feeling really good about the board state, so I'll take the dub. Round 5, and since we're in the second half of the day, once pairings go up, there is a decent chance one of my mates will know what they're playing. This particular bloke was on Ho-Oh Armarouge box, and Nat actually paired him in round 2. She was the only other person in the room on Absol box, and although we couldn't settle on a matching 60, we did talk a bunch before the event. In Game 1, they had an explosive start, drawing with both Squawkabilly and Carmine, dropping Area 0 and benching a full 8 Pokemon. This speedy start was going to cause them some issues though. Nat had already told me that their only switching out seemed to be Iron Leaves. Now, normally this would be fine, as Armarouge's Fire Up ability lets them freely move energies around the board, meaning they can always attack with the active Pokemon. But Squawkabilly's Motivate really isn't much of a threat, and it is still a liability to be trapped. Again, normally this would be fine, as they could simply forfeit the bird, allowing it to be KO'd after 8 clutches. However, due to the fighting resistance, Ethan's Sudowoodo does 0 damage to both Squawkabilly and Mew for that matter. Plus, it can only take 20 damage in return from the latter, since unlike Yveltal, it doesn't have a secondary damaging attack for genome hacking to copy. Anyway, I bring up Squawkabilly and announce Impound. They motivate for 20, and I move the damage back onto their board with Munkidori's Adrenabrain and Impound again. They use their own Munkidori to move it back to me and motivate once more. At this point, they're netting 20 damage per turn, but but thanks to Area 0, I have more than enough bench space for a second Monkey Dory. Now the loop looks like this. They motivate an Adrenabrain for 50 total damage. I use 2 Adrenabrains to move the whole 50 back and then impound for 0. This goes on for legitimately 40 minutes while they completely refuse to scoop game 1. Every turn, I just stack an additional 20 damage on their board while they gradually deck out. After the match, they did tell me that their plan was to force me to build up so much damage that I had to take a KO eventually. But I'm not sure if they realized just how much HP was on their side of the board. Easily over 1,500. And are we really stalling for 75 turns without decking out? That's just not gonna happen. Eventually, they do lose by running out of cards, but I was just a couple turns away from a 6-prize combo. I'd been manually attaching to Ursaluna and building up enough damage to use Monkey Dory for 3 prizes, in combination with gusting up their damaged Kangaskhan to take the rest. Going into game 2, I'm pretty sure that we had less than 10 minutes left, and I commit to the retreat lock strategy again. Although this time, they have an incredibly cool line to get out of it. They intentionally leave a bench space open for Iron Leaves. Then when I go for some retreat lock, they play it down, switch into Roaring Moon, and use Calamity Storm to bump Area 0, discarding Iron Leaves as well as their other liabilities. Now, if they happen to get locked again, they can simply Night Stretcher for Leaves and replay Area 0 to make room for it. However, before all this could happen, I was still able to get a few turns of the lock, and there just isn't enough time to finish game 2. I've got absolutely no idea why they didn't just scoop game 1 as soon as I locked them, but hey, I'm not going to complain. Plus, I do think I could have handled it if we'd gone to a game 3 by attacking with a Bravery Charmed Mist Energy Kangaskhan that simply cannot be one-shot by anything in their deck. Not even the sneaky Ogie I knew they were playing, since it only does 340 damage. Ideally from here, I could take 4 prizes with Kangaskhan and a bit of Monkey Dory maths, then close things out with Blood Moon Ursaluna. But I guess we'll never know because game 2 didn't finish. This really was entirely on my opponent for dragging out game 1. I'm feeling a bit better now on a record of 3-1-1, and with only 2 more rounds today, I only need to win 1 of them to make it into day 2. Yep, 4-2-1 makes it through to the next phase. Did I mention this tournament is tiny? My next opponent was absolutely not going to be a free pass into day 2 though. Kaito Arai, one of the most accomplished players in the current era. He's won a regionals, he's cut multiple international championships, and he did not want to lose. Kaito was on Grimmsnarl, which was surprising to me since most people had completely written the deck off. And as someone who has personally played a ton of Grimmsnarl, I can safely say that Megabox is a terrible matchup. Absol trades so favorably, Cornerstone is a nuisance to get through, and you can even straight up out Monkey Dory Grimmsnarl with a combination of Penny, E-Switch, and Bravery Charm to better control the damage. In game 1, I don't get to do any of these things. I draw poorly, don't get to TM Turbo Energize, and just resort to slow attaching on my monkeys while I shove up a Cornerstone in an attempt to buy time. On the other side, Kaito speedran setting up triple Monkey Dory, hitting an E-Switch to cheat an attachment, and even had Iron Bundle to push my Cornerstone out of the active, racking up more relevant damage. Eventually reaching a point where he can just spawn camp my monkeys as I bench them, so I gotta go next. Luckily, this time, he's the one with rough draws. I pull off a classic Trolley Turbo Energize on turn 1, and on his second turn, he doesn't even have a supporter to play, just using Filch to draw a card. I take a KO with Claw of Darkness, choosing the least terrible card in his awful hand, and the top deck isn't able to save him, so he just Filches again. But this time, Claw of Darkness hits a secret box that he top decked off of Filch. Yep, this one's over. We've got about 15 minutes left for the final game, and I really want this to finish. Since we each already have a tie, there's really nothing to be gained from another. Kaito is drawing really hot, going second and setting up a strong board with TM Evo. But my turn 2 is also just about as good as it gets with Trolley and TM Turbo Energize. Now, at this point, as Grimmsnarl, I think you just need to take the gamble and attack the Absol. There's a chance I don't find the return KO, and attempting to two-shot it and remove all my energy really is the only win condition when we both set up like this. But after he does this, I am able to get there with a hand attached to Monkey Dory and E-Switch to the other, allowing for double Adrenabrain, sending over 60 damage and instantly KOing Grimmsnarl with Terminal Period. My position is looking incredibly favored, with damage already stacked on my board and a Bravery Charmed Absol that has more than enough HP to survive a Shadow Bullet. There's just not all that much he can do to come back. However, there's also not all that much time left on the clock. Suddenly, the contents of both our discards becomes a lot more interesting. And that town store that can only search out TM Evo and TM Devo, which do absolutely nothing in this situation, becomes a surprisingly difficult choice. He even retreats all the energy off of his other Grimmsnarl just to get a 2-prizer out of the active and slow me down. Clearly playing playing for a tie at this point. So I ask a judge who is loosely spectating the match to watch for pace of play. No need for a penalty or anything, as long as we're both taking timely actions. Remember, you are always allowed to ask a judge to do this. Miraculously, the speed changes right back to how it was throughout the rest of the match, and I'm able to close it out before we even reach overtime turns. This crucial win of the day locks up my ticket to phase 2 of the tournament, but there's still one more round left today, and winning it would give me a nice head start. I've paired a Slowking, not a matchup you'd expect to play against, but not one that I'd complain about seeing either. I'm pretty sure Absol has a very comfortable time, so long as my opponent doesn't draw perfectly. In game 1, I have to go first, but I'm able to set up for a turn 3 Absol, and let's just say Slowking isn't always the most functional deck, especially when their best card is getting deleted from hand every turn. So after she uses Kyurem's attack to take 2 prizes, and Iona to 4 and a few Claw of Darknesses are more than enough to brick her out of the game. Once again, I have to go first, but this time her draws are much better, and she's able to chain the first few attacks without any issues despite multiple claws. There was always just too many good cards in her hand for Absol to be impactful enough. The game is still super winnable though. As she goes down to just 1 prize, finally removing my Absol, I can start to cook. I bump Academy at Night, set up Blood Moon Ursaluna, and Iona to 1, KOing the only Slowking, leaving a single Slowpoke on the bench. If she whiffs this next turn, I'm pretty sure I just win the game on the spot. So, of course, after the top deck, her hand is exactly Lily's Determination and Academy at Night. Basically, the 2 perfect cards. We both understand that it all comes down to this Lily's. If it hits Slowking, Energy, and Annihilate, that's the game, and we definitely won't have time for a third. I also know my opponent. We're not super close or anything, but we've talked before at events, and I thought it would be funny to get a judge to shuffle the deck for a bit more of a dramatic reveal. However, when the judge picks up her deck, they immediately become extremely concerned with the sleeves. They've clearly been used a lot, and I guess the markings didn't appear to be completely uniform. For now, we play on and finish game 2, where she does actually hit Ultra Ball, Night Stretcher, and Energy to clutch the win. But then the judges take away both of our decks for a mid-set check. I'm not too worried about mine, since I've already passed one today, but she rightfully seems pretty worried. We agree that if there are no deck issues on either side, we'll just call it a tie. There'd only be a few minutes left to play game 3 anyway, and this is not the kind of matchup where you can quickly get off an attack, let alone determine a winner that early into the match. To my surprise, I'm the one who gets pulled aside by the judges for an issue with my deck. At some point in the day, through shuffling and natural wear and tear, my cards got a bit cooked. It happens. But one particularly bad card just so happened to be my Team Rocket's Watchtower, a one-of tech card. Now, because it was so obviously just a scuff from playing an entire day of Pokemon, they determined it was without any malicious intent, but still had to issue me a game loss for this set nonetheless. So, given everything was okay with my opponent's deck, that's it. I lose the set. I'll still be able to play on in day 2, but it's pretty unfortunate. As I'm walking back to the table, another judge comes up, this time to inform me that the set will not be continuing and my opponent is no longer able to play in the tournament. Basically, they've been dropped, and I'll get what is essentially a completely undeserved win. Now, the judges can't actually say any details regarding the situation, but from what I can infer, the sleeves really were that bad. And the judges must have had at least some suspicion that she could have potentially gained an advantage from these markings if she really wanted to. Now, I don't have any reason to believe my opponent was cheating, and from what I know of her, I don't think that she was. But I will say, you really do need to be re-sleeving before every major event. You cannot be rocking up with old sleeves and giving judges any reason to penalize you. Personally, I make sure to re-sleeve the night before every event. And then before every day 2, I go through all of my sleeves and make sure that there's no damage. After this incident, I might even start checking them between rounds when I get the chance. Anyway, that was an incredibly stressful roller coaster of emotion. So I'm glad that it was the last round of the day and I can finally just go chill out with my mates. We hit up this unreal kebab joint that was exactly what I needed. And then each got ourselves a well-deserved sweet treat. And we did deserve it because almost the entire accommodation was farming. There were only going to be 2 more rounds of Swiss tomorrow. I was going in as the 7th seed and only needed to win 1 of them to make top cut. At 6 wins, 1 tie and 6 wins, 1 loss, Henry and Burris were the 1st and 2nd seeds, guaranteed to pair each other in the first round where they could just intentionally draw to lock up top cut. Angus was still in contention, but would need to win both of his rounds. And although Gareth didn't make day 2, he did achieve his goal of top 32 with an incredible 4 wins and 3 losses. Yep, in fact, there was even a player with 3 wins, 3 losses, and a tie, who placed 32nd. This event is unreal. Oh, and Julian was also in the Airbnb, but we don't talk about how he did. Of course, it wouldn't be a classic TimDanklin tournament run without an immaculate 2 hours of sleep before day 2, but I mean, that's just the norm at this point. Also, this is just really funny. Take a look at the deck conversion rates. 100% of Mega Absol box players made it. Me and Nat are cooking. When pairings finally go up for round 8, there are only a few people on my record that I can realistically hit. 2 Gardevoir Jellicents, a Dragapult, a Gholdengo Lopunny, and a Raging Bolt, which is a terrible matchup for Absol, and he actually farmed Nat in a quick 2-0 during day 1. You'll never guess who I paired. My mate Justin, who for some reason is dedicated to only playing Raging Bolt now. Despite it being an incredibly unfavorable matchup, because his deck is a complete pile, in game 1, the start is actually pretty slow. He's fully aware that benching any support Pokemon like Squawkabilly or Latias could result in getting retreat locked out of the game. So he instead goes for a bit of Itchy Pollen with Badoo, trying to slow down my setup. While it does deny me access to Precious Trolley, I do already have Mega Kangaskhan, Petron, and Yveltal in play. This is perfect because I can draw 2 with Run Errand and still promote Yveltal to rip the Turbo Energize I found off of Arven and power up Kangaskhan. He still isn't able to piece together an attack, and the deck's heavy reliance on support Pokemon is really starting to show. So after another Itchy Pollen, it's time for me to initiate the prize race. With a Mew on his bench, I can just boss it up and take a guaranteed KO with Kangaskhan, no coin flips required. He manages to respond with Raging Bolt, but at this point, with prizes at 4-3 and no more Mega Pokemon on my side, the game is functionally over. I drop an Ursaluna with Counter Gain to go down to 2, while also setting up Petront for a follow-up attacker. And with no way to break this checkmate, he scoops. Game 2 doesn't start off quite as well though, and while I am able to get Yveltal and Kangaskhan down, there's no Petront for that extra mobility. It also means I can't exactly build up damage on my side of the board, which I would really like to do. Justin still refuses to bench liabilities for me to trap though, and goes for another turn 1 Itchy Pollen. I respond by powering up my Kangaskhan, however this time after the second Itchy Pollen, there are 2 key differences. I don't have boss's orders in hand to take the first 2 prize KO, and on top of this, he has a much healthier hand size and should be able to threaten a 3 prize KO on Kangaskhan with his own boss next turn. So instead, I choose to keep Yveltal in the active and simply trap Badoo for a turn. Burning a switching out this early would be way too risky, and knowing that I have to KO Badoo next turn, he just announces another Itchy Pollen. I have a plan though. I can set up Monkey Dory and Adrenabrain for 10, finishing off the Badoo, forcing him to promote a 2 prize Pokemon and giving me a chance to take boss's orders off the prizes. I missed the 1 in 6 for boss, but knowing that he almost definitely has KO on my Kangaskhan next turn, I simply have to risk it. I promote Kangaskhan and draw another 2 with Run Errand. Still no boss's orders. I'm going to have to flip. If I hit heads on this rapid fire combo, I essentially win the game on the spot. And even if I flip tails, I am still in a decent spot, but I will need Justin to whiff at some point throughout the rest of the match. Yep, I love the Pokemon trading card game. Obviously, he knocks out my Kangaskhan, and I just have to respond with Cornerstone Ogerpon, matching prizes at 3-3. His attacking options aren't great, and he just brings up Pheasantipity, hitting for 100 with Torrential Pump while sniping my Monkey Dory to take a single prize. This play does have the added benefit of setting up Pheasantipity to be in range of a second Torrential Pump. There are a few different things I can do in this position, but without access to Counter Catcher, I decide the best is to just KO the active with Blood Moon Ursaluna and Iona to 2, while also making sure Pheasantipity is healed out of range of Torrential Pump. There's nothing on his board that can immediately respond, and no energy in play. So despite Mew and Pheasantipity being able to draw a few extra cards, there's pretty good odds that this Blood Moon Iona combo sticks. Plus, I even have Yveltal and Petron already benched so that I can reset Ursaluna and just win next turn. Nest Ball fetches Sandy Shocks, Mew draws into Lilies, and now Justin has a decision. He can either flip the script now and bank on hitting exactly Crispin, or play down Lily's Determination first and then flip the script to see more unique cards. But he would need to hit exactly the last energy switch and a fighting energy. He rips the Fez first, and that's Crispin for game. Losing to a coin flip really sucks, especially since I still had such good odds afterwards anyway. But whatever, it's time for game 3, and I finally get the advantage of going second in this matchup. Although it's not particularly advantageous when my hand doesn't have any cards. I'm unable to go for the same strategy I did in previous games and need to get a bit creative. Instead, I'll be relying on Retreat Lock, trapping something in the active that doesn't have any energy. This isn't ideal though, as he's capable of only benching Pokemon that can attack, and with 4 energy switch, I can never be sure something is truly trapped. He does have to burn one of his only 2 switching cards in Iron Leaves to go down to 3 prizes, but at this point, my only realistic target to trap is Pheasantipity. I bring it up with boss's orders and use Pseudo Wudo to impound for 40. He immediately drops double energy switch and hand attaches to power it up. But there's nothing on my board with 100 or less HP, so he simply settles for hitting my active down to 10 HP remaining. Luckily, a combination of double Adrenabrain and attaching a Bravery Charm brings it right back up to 120 and again out of Cruel Arrow range. I can even use Penny to heal up and tank another hit, but Justin's next top deck is Boss's Orders, allowing him to bring up Monkey Dory and now hit for weakness with Cruel Arrow, one-shotting the monkey and going down to just 2 prize cards while still having access to Prime Catcher. I draw as many cards as I can, rip Pokegear 3.0 to see the top 7 cards of my now relatively thin deck, and I don't find either of the 2 Ionos that are hiding in there. Without any way to disrupt his hand, Justin plays down the Prime Catcher and takes game 3, locking up his place in top 8. I can't be too upset about losing such a rough matchup, but these losses are always gonna sting. Fortunately, I have one more chance. One more winning in. And I've actually paired another one of my locals, Peter Lowe. He's on Golden Go Lopunny, a matchup that half my deck is dedicated to beating. This is gonna be sweet. Game 1, I get to go second. I open with Latias, but beyond a single nest ball, my hand really isn't doing too much. So I use it to grab Mega Kangaskhan and start drawing some cards. Fortunately, I hit an Arven and can grab the second nest ball and TM Turbo Energize to start powering up Cornerstone. I'm able to take a prize card before he gusts up my Kangaskhan and takes 3, but this position is actually fine. Without Baneri in play, my Cornerstone isn't under any immediate threat, and I can just penny up my Latias to deny any more free prize cards. I'm able to take 2 more knockouts while he slowly chips away at my Cornerstone with Solrock and Hops Cramorant, but he is chipping away. Recognizing that he'll have the KO with 1 more Solrock attack, I now choose to bench the second Cornerstone and begin attaching to that one, allowing my active to go down, leaving Peter with just 1 prize card remaining to my 3. But now he's in a tricky position. It doesn't seem like he'll be able to close this one out with only 1 prize attackers. And if he just benches Baneri on its own, I'll be able to gust it up before he can evolve it out of range. So he intentionally discards Lopunny with Superior Energy Retrieval, Super Rods it back into the deck, and makes use of TM Evolution to immediately spawn the Mega Bunny into play. I just need to continue powering up my Cornerstone, ensuring that it has a Bravery Charm attached and can't be one-shot by Gale Thrust. Peter confidently retreats into the Bunny and hits for 230, thinking that the game is all but locked up. Then, from my absolutely massive hand, I drop Sandy Shock EX and Energy Switcher fighting onto it, attach Counter Gain and retreat into it using Magnetic Absorption to finish powering it up, and then swing for my final 3 prize cards. The game plan worked perfectly and I feel incredible. Game 2, I have to go first, but I open Kangaskhan, which is great. I run errand for a couple cards and pass it over. It's a little concerning that I don't have an Arven yet, but I've still got some draws. He sets up a strong turn 1 board and I just run errand again. Still no Arven, but at least I found a Lilies, which draws me 8 useless cards, forcing me to bench a second Mega Kangaskhan if I don't want to get donked. He gets the knockout and wins on the following turn with the world's easiest 3-3 prize map. But now I get to go second and have plenty of time left to close this one out. I open with Cornerstone Ogerpon and have Arven. This is absolutely perfect. I can just set up a board of double Cornerstone and chill until he's forced to go in with Lopunny. Then, once he takes a KO, I'll respond with Sandy Shocks. This is going to be easy. I search my deck and the second Cornerstone Ogerpon is prized, as well as a Nest Ball and my precious Trolley. I think this kind of flustered me because in hindsight, I absolutely should have just grabbed Kangaskhan and manually retreated into it. I'd be postponing Turbo Energize for a turn, but I'd be able to draw so many more cards and it really shouldn't matter in the long run. Instead, I take a much more aggressive approach, benching Latias for the free retreat and then using it to immediately power up my only Cornerstone Ogerpon. This is still effective, but outside of the Arven that I just played, my hand is really shaky. And after Latias goes down, I feel forced to bench Pheasantipity to even stay in the game. Although, again, looking back, maybe I could have just waited a turn and banked on some top decks. It might have been the better alternative, but it's really hard to say. The game boils down to Peter on 2 prizes while I still have 4 remaining, so KOing Mega Lopunny won't get me there. My board is just 2 Monkey Dories and a heavily damaged Cornerstone. The only line I can see is to attack with Ethan Sudowoodo. I'm starting to get flashbacks to that late night Friday testing. The reason that Sudowoodo stayed in this deck. This guy's the GOAT. They already single-handedly won me a set in day 1. And now they're going to try and imitate this Lopunny and get me into top cut. Fellas, you've made it this far. Go and subscribe right now so that I can flip this heads. Using Sudowoodo over Sandy Shocks would allow me to maintain a 1 prize board state as well as Cornerstone. However, I do miss on either Penny or the second Dark Energy to heal Cornerstone out of range of Solrock. So before I can even roll the dice, Peter shows me the Prime Catcher, Solrock, and Fighting Energy. Regardless of whether or not Try to Imitate was successful, that's the set. A lot of things went wrong for me that game, and I do think a majority of the time I should draw well enough to get over the line. But I also think that it could have been completely avoided by just taking a slightly less aggressive line. I reckon that one simple decision to take things a turn faster and bench Latias instead of Kangaskhan completely cost me a spot in top cut. If I'd made a different play, if I'd benched that Mega Kangaskhan, maybe we'd have a different story. But instead, we have the one where I don't win the set, where I don't make it into top cut, where I don't have a chance to win the tournament. In the end, Peter actually went on to win the whole event. Kato placed second, Justin finished in the top 4, and Henry made top 8. Those were some absolutely stacked opponents, and it's reflected in my insane resistance, which allowed me to still finish in 13th place despite those back-to-back losses. I can't complain about a top 16 too much, but as always, I would have loved to play in top cut. You know how it is. Overall, despite its size and the venue, the event was pretty chill. New Zealand is a beautiful country that I always love visiting, and I really do hope they get another opportunity to host an even bigger and better tournament. Maybe even a proper regionals next time. I'll make sure to be there. Hope you fellas enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and do all that stuff. And if you want a bit of bonus content, feel free to support me as a YouTube channel member, Patreon supporter, or over on Metafy. Cheers, fellas.